Welcome to the Build the Earth USA trial tutorial. This is a comprehensive walkthrough from downloading Google Earth Pro to building your trial build. If you've already completed some of these steps, feel free to skip around using the video chapters. Before you start building, it's important to have the right tools. Google Earth Pro will be used for everything you choose to build. The link to the install page is in the description. After installing it and opening it for the first time, click on Tools in the top left and click Options in the drop-down menu. Under the 3D View menu, select the Meters Kilometers button. Under the Show Lat Long menu, click the Decimal Degrees button. Click on the Navigation tab and click on the Do Not Automatically Tilt While Zooming button under the Navigation menu to prevent Street View activation when zooming in on satellite view. Once you've received your trial plot coordinates, log on to the server your trial reviewer has provided. Make sure you're in creative mode. Use the command /warp trial to get to the trial area, copy the coordinates from your trial ticket, and then switch to Google Earth Pro and paste the given coordinates into the search bar on the top left. TPLLing is the start to any Build the Earth build. The command /TPLL turns real-life coordinates into in-game coordinates. This is how it's ensured that everything is one-to-one. To TPLL, first open the ruler tool in Google Earth so your cursor shows crosshairs instead of a hand. Then, center your cursor where the corner of the wall meets the ground if visible, and hold down the keys Ctrl-Shift-C. Then, switch back to your Minecraft tab and type /TPLL and then paste the coordinates. Face directly down and place a block. Usually we will use a placeholder such as colored wool, knowing that we will be changing it soon. This is just a way to lay out the structure of your build before adding more detail later on. If you land on the edge or corner of a block, you should also place a different colored placeholder on the side or sides that are closest. This will help you for later. Repeat this step for all visible corners. Sometimes the corner is not visible. For example, it's right next to another wall or a fence, or the 3D is a little messed up. If this is the case, try to estimate where the corner might be by moving your point slightly in from the corner of the roof, depending on the size of the roof's overhang if there is one. Be sure to use a different colored block for this one, as you may have to correct it once you move on to outlining. Run the //wand command and select the wooden axe that appears in your inventory. To find block IDs, hold down the F3 key and H. For example, Orange Wool's ID is 35-1. Left-click the first corner and right-click the second corner to create a selection between 2 points. Run the //line command and type a block ID in as the argument. Do this for all the corners of your build. If the outline of your building is not parallel, you will need to modify it to make it so. To determine this, examine the angle or slope of one of the lines that makes up a wall of your build. Compare this with the line that is on the other side of the house, which should be parallel to it. Here is an outline that is not parallel. You can see that the lines on the left and right are not the same, so we will need to adjust one or more of the corners to correct for that, like so. It's hard to train your brain to see angled Minecraft lines as straight, but as soon as you get the hang of it, it becomes second nature. A parallel outline requires both of these lines to have the same angle or slope. Since very few builds on Build the Earth are perfectly 90 degrees, this angle will be different for almost every build. If the lines are parallel in real life but aren't in-game, try re-TPLLing the corners. Or use those different colored blocks you placed earlier to redo your lines. You may find yourself going back and forth testing different positions, but always start with the TPLLs that land in the center of a block. Another useful trick is to take one wall you know is accurate, copy it by selecting and running //copy while standing on the corner, then pasting it while standing on the other corner. Make sure to remove any excess if one side is smaller than the other. If you are still having trouble with your outline, please ask in your ticket and only in your ticket before moving on. You can always work on other details like landscaping and fencing in the meantime, but always make sure your outline is parallel before moving on to the rest of your house. You should also follow these steps to construct your fence line. In our trial area, sometimes the house next door will be completed and the fence will already be there. Just repeat the same steps you used when constructing the walls. You should /TPLL all corners of the fence and use that to outline what you need to build yourself. It helps to complete this step before moving any further because it helps you check your outline. In the trowel area, the walls will typically remain parallel with the fence. Use a different colored placeholder for your fence, as you will be using a different process for this than the walls. This will come later. To get an accurate height, you need to use the 3D Path tool in Google Earth Pro. Find it in the ruler pop-up by switching over to 3D Path. Left-click on the bottom and top of the wall and check the height. If there are issues with the 3D or foliage, instead, subtract the elevation of the roof and the ground using the elevation measurement in the bottom right corner of the screen. The elevation you see is the exact measurement wherever your cursor lies, so make sure to measure the elevation of the ground carefully and remember to account for the fact that the build could be on a slope. Many builds might have a very large difference in height from one end to the other, especially when they are on a hill. Then, make a world edit selection of the outline you made and use the command //stack the height of the build -1 down or up. Be careful not to accidentally stack any neighboring builds when you do your selections. If you do, just use the command //undo. This will copy the outline blocks of the house in the direction you chose. Later on, you can also use this command to stack levels of windows at once. It is also good practice to include the argument -a at the end of your stack commands, as this will prevent you from unintentionally stacking air into other blocks. Not every roof will be exactly the same, but in general, start with the peak. Like the walls, it's important to get the height correct. There are two ways to do this. Start with the process seen here. You are looking at a roof where the highest point, or the peak, extends all the way to the walls. If you can't see the ground underneath the peak, use the elevation method previously mentioned to find the height. Otherwise, use the 3D Path tool on Google Earth Pro to measure the top of the roof. Round to the closest half block, and this will give you the height. TPLL both ends of the peak of the roof line, which should be exactly where you measured from. Sometimes the peak will be 1 block, sometimes it'll be 2 blocks. You want both sides of your wall to have an equal number of blocks from where the peak of your roof lies, depending on whether the roof ends at the wall or on another roof piece. Again, all builds will have a slightly different roof, but in most cases, you should aim for a midpoint. Continue this process with the 2 different roof pieces at the front of the house. On these, the roof peak does not extend all the way to the walls. You will still use /TPLL for these, but to measure the height, you will need to use the subtraction method using the elevation to get the height correct. Now that you have the correct height in TPLLs, use //line to connect your points at this height. This will be the peaks of your roof. Now, find a block with both stair and slab variants, which is as close to the color of the roof in real life, and place it at the peak. Use a slab if the height is rounded to the closest half block, or just a regular full block if not. Again, similar to the walls, it's important that the peak of the roof is parallel. When making the slope of your roof, it is typically good practice to first make lines from the edge of the peak down to the corners where the bottom of the roof lies. This is where you may find that your original peak is slightly off or has a 2-block center. If the distance on both sides from the peak is supposed to be equal, be sure to adjust your peak line, still ensuring that it is parallel with the walls. Remember that whatever block or slab you chose for the roof peak should stay there, even if your placeholder line removed part of it. Now, you're going to take those straight lines you've just made, and you're going to use either stairs or slabs to even out the slope. If you've built a roof in Minecraft before, you may be familiar with the process. Just be sure that the slope is straight the whole way, otherwise your house might look like it has a leaky roof. You're almost done. You can use //line to fill in the roof row by row. This will look roughly parallel with your walls, but you will have to fill in some of the gaps like you see here at the lower block level. Moving back to the front sections, we can simply follow the angle of the peaks, sloping down at an even rate. You can use stairs to even out these smaller sections, but try to stay consistent in where you decide to use stairs versus blocks and slabs. We understand that roofing can seem complicated, especially on the first try, so feel free to rewatch this as many times as you need and ask a reviewer in your ticket, and only in your ticket if you get stuck. If all else fails, there's nothing wrong with retrying your roof if something looks off. Now that your house is looking more like a house, we're going to move on to the fun part, detailing. First, check your house in Street View and 3D. Because the image quality on Street View is pretty saturated, we will be using the historic imagery by clicking See More Dates. Here we can see that the walls are a tannish white color, so we'll choose something like bone block. Everything up until this point has been pretty objective in the process you will use, but now you get to use a little creativity in how you choose to replicate details from your real-world building. Select a portion of the house or the whole house if you know it will not affect nearby builds. Use the command // replace with the block you want to change, followed by the block you want to replace it with, like so. There are a few important detailing tips that you should know, the first being the repl tool. To use this, grab any tool from the inventory and while holding it, type /repl1. Then, simply left-click anything you want to save to the tool, such as the bottom of a door, and right-click to replace anything with what you saved. Next is the Banner Maker plugin. Type /bm to open the menu where you can easily make and save banner designs without the need to craft them. You can also type /hdb to access the head database, where you can find custom head designs for nearly everything you can think of, such as plants, street signs, or mailboxes. Type /hdb search with whatever design you are looking for to see all related designs. Here, you can see a few different window designs commonly used in Build the Earth, making use of end rods, half doors, and carpets to represent window rails. When building your windows and doors, make sure to TPLL their locations and use the 3D path tool to measure their height and width, as some windows may only be a half block tall. Refrain from using Minecraft doors, since banners with a backing block will usually look more accurate. We also almost always use a type of stained glass instead of regular Minecraft glass, which is not as accurate to real-life windows. Always check the street view before detailing your windows, but remember that there may be several different ways of doing them, so find what you feel fits best. It is important that you always put glass behind your window detailing, and a backing block such as gray wool or another darkish color besides black, so that the inside is not visible. Finally, go back into Google Earth and TPLL any roof details you see, such as the solar panel. Make sure to also do any small details like satellite dishes and vents. Now, let's move on to detailing the front yard and the fence. While the difference is very subtle in these acacia doors, using the repl tool is usually good practice for making fences. For any details you see, always TPLL and connect up the straight lines using //line, checking that they are parallel. Other than this, be creative in how you do your detailing. Just remember that accuracy in size and shape comes before color and texture. When doing your landscaping, try to use a variety of plants and different textures to match what your build looks like. Check the heights of your trees with the elevation method to give you a rough outline. Use fences and walls instead of logs for tree trunks unless it is actually that big. Make use of the repl tool to place small plants in your tree designs, giving them a more complex shape and look. When texturing the ground, use blocks that don't contrast each other too much, and try to make it look organic instead of randomized. Moving on to the backyard, we will start by TPLLing the awning and using carpets along the top. Again, make sure this line is parallel to your build. Some houses may have pools in the backyard, which can seem very tricky depending on the shape, but as long as you TPLL, you should be able to work out even the most complex shapes. Just like the front, you'll want to build every detail you see in the backyard from 3D view, oftentimes having to guess what some details might be. Don't fret too much over this part. Just build what you see in the correct places and it will be as accurate as you can get. Many times, you will have portions of your build completely hidden from Street View in 3D. When this happens, you will just have to guess what kind of details would be there. For example, you can be quite certain that under an awning like this, there would be a door and some windows, so build what you believe would go there. A lesser known tip is to go on a site such as Zillow and see if your house has a listing there, which would likely have reference pictures for all these hidden parts. There's a few things in-game that are outright banned. Any entities such as paintings, item frames, armor stands, and boats are not to be used at all. Block entities like beds, banners, and heads are allowed, but should be limited because they disappear at a distance. Before submitting your build for review, always double check in both 3D and Street View to make sure you built every detail. Compare in-game and adjust anything you need to change. While there is nothing wrong with asking for advice in your trial ticket, remember that reviewers are human too, and we're all volunteers. Please give your reviewers at least 48 hours to respond before you ping someone. With that, you should now have everything you need to complete your trial build and be on your way to becoming a builder. Be sure to subscribe because we'll be making more in-depth tutorials for different types of builds in the future. Leave a comment if you still have any questions, as we want to make this process as transparent as possible. Till then, have fun building and ask any questions you have in your trial ticket.